The first presidential debate between President Donald Trump and Joe Biden got into a contentious start, breaking down after a few moments, with Trump interrupting Biden on several occasions and Biden calling the president a clown and a liar. As the discussion about the Supreme Court quickly turned to COVID-19, Trump claimed without evidence that 2 million people would have died if Biden was president. Biden said Trump cannot be believed about the coronavirus, saying that the president has said the virus will go away by Easter, and that Trump had recommended injecting bleach. Trump called that statement sarcastic.
I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was no economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was
no
recession.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far more people. Far
That is-
more people. Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives.
God.
It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call them.
the head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slawi?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
he said it's a possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be after that.
When it's generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be delivering.
This is the same man
who
all
told
set
you
up. By Easter, this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take...
Wow, Tundu, I stayed up late till 2 a.m. to watch this, about 1:30, and I regretted every single minute of it. I mean, I don't know what your view is, but...
I mean, if not for COVID and the social distancing, at some point I thought they were actually going to have an all-out brawl, as a descent into fisticuffs. It was a disgrace. It was actually a prayer point for me. I actually was watching them thinking, at this age, may I never be this belligerent and bitter. It was horrible. Amen. Donald Trump behaved in such an unpresidential manner. And this was an opportunity for him, because he is very popular, to just sort of talk about what he's achieved in the 4 years, his plans for the new term, if at all he's elected. Joe Biden also had a chance to just really sell himself, sell his agenda, distinguish himself from Donald Trump. But no, we were hearing things like, liar, will you shut up? And then Donald Trump, that low blow, talking about Joe Biden's son who had a drug problem. That's not a moral issue. A lot of parents in America have children who have had drug problems. They should not have said that. Donald Trump's children admitted, and they were fined $2 million, the Trump Foundation, because they took money from a cancer charity and used it to fund their campaign. He's in no position to talk about other people's children. It just got very personal and ugly. And the part about racial equality in America, it was very telling for me that they went straight, pivoted into law and order. And that, to me, says a lot about the thinking of President Trump. People of color he associates with security and a security threat. And then he shouts out the Proud Boys. Yeah. The Proud Boys are an extreme right-wing, white supremacist group that have managed to be banned from Facebook. Do you know what you have to be banned from Facebook? Because Facebook really is a playground for all kinds of dreadful behavior. They were banned from Twitter first, but they got banned from Facebook to show you the kind of language they put out there. And those people are now celebrating the fact that he told them to stand down and stand by. And they've reported a spike in their membership now because of this. He has validated these people.
They were celebrating.
Yes,
you had to see the Proud Boys yesterday.
It's awful. It was an embarrassment.
Well, presidential debates in the United States have become part of the ritual of the presidential process. Those debates, the first of three, has now been witnessed for 1.5 hours this morning, early this morning, West African time, but it was a disaster. Presidential debates are also used, to make promises by the candidates to the people. In terms of promises, in terms of content, I think what we witnessed between President Trump and Vice President Joe Biden didn't live up to expectation. It was a schoolboy debate in which people were divided as if they were having a secondary school conversation.
Yes.
Now, in the context of COVID-19, the two candidates in the U.S. presidential election for 2020 have not had the opportunity to hold the usual kind of campaigns. So the presidential debate would have provided us an opportunity to know a little more and for them to be able to interact with their constituents. Even the hall attendance was restricted to just about 70 persons. Ordinarily, you will have up to about 900 persons attending the debate. Now, that also did not happen. So we didn't even have that opportunity in terms of, what should happen. Now, in terms of the performance of the two candidates, I think that President Trump was a disaster. I think, he embarrassed the United States. Yes. He embarrassed himself.
Yes, it was shocking.
He gave an image of the United States that is not what we know in the rest of the world. Ordinarily, say in Nigeria, when there's going to be a presidential debate, there will be people who say, oh, this is how they do it in America. This is how they do it in America. Because the United States is supposed, in people's imagination, with regard to democracy, to represent a standard. But what we saw in terms of President Trump's personal performance was a violation of that standard, of that value. And it clearly demonstrated the extent to which he is unfit for the office.
Yes.
Vice President Joe Biden, in my view, also was busy interrupting like Trump, but Trump was worse off. And, the moderator made that clear. That's Chris Wallace, the son of Mike Wallace of 60 Minutes. Now, but he restrained himself from throwing tantrums because the provocation from the Trump side was so much that somebody would just have lost his cool.
Oh, yeah.
Vice President Joe Biden is not a great debater, but he's a man of experience. And I think that if we were to compare the two of them, he did much better. That's my own assessment. Trump went there just to provoke. And that was why right from the beginning, he was mixing up the facts. He was interrupting. At a point, in fact, Chris Wallace had to tell him, look, Mr. President, I'm the moderator of this program. You will allow me to ask the questions, and you will answer because I'm the moderator. And I think Chris Wallace should be commended. 3 70-year-old men, 2 of them 70-something-year-old men, 2 of them as the debaters, another 72-year-old man as the moderator. And Chris Wallace showed great perseverance and patience.
Yeah.
I mean, in 2016, he moderated the debate between Trump and Hillary. This time around, but this one was a test of human endurance. Yeah. And I think that he pulled it off quite well, and that should not be surprising considering his experience and his pedigree. On the issues, now I don't think anybody threw much light on any of the issues. On race, Tundu has already commented on that, how President Trump was even using the opportunity to mollify his base, to appeal and energize his base. Instead of making a clear statement on racial-motivated violence, he twisted it, and he was talking about the Antifa boys, right? But Joe Biden did better on that score when he said, look, any kind of criminal behavior, the law must be enforced. On climate change, there was no clarity, and that was quite disappointing.
On the economy,
on crime control, on manufacturing, because there was so much economy. In fact, how disastrous that debate was indicated by the fact that Mike Wallace Chris Wallace, at the end, had to end the debate abruptly. But what will be the effect? I don't think it will make much difference. As at this time, 35 days to the election, over 1 million Americans have already voted, right? In the polls, Vice President Biden has a single-digit 8% lead, right? The race is very tight at this moment in the battleground states, in the swing states. So the purpose of that debate will have been maybe to persuade those people who have not made up their minds, they're called undecided voters, or perhaps to further persuade the young Americans, those who attain the age of franchise between 2016 and now. But in terms of providing illumination and providing a clear choice, I don't think that debate lived up to the billing. Maybe when on October 7, we have the debate between Kamala Harris and Vice President Mike Pence, we may get a better performance. Or maybe perhaps during the second debate, maybe there will be greater clarity. But in my view, if I were to judge on the basis of this particular debate, I think that President Trump is unfit for office.
I mean, I would have loved to say so much, if possible, if I could get 5-10 minutes to comment on this and break it down, but time is not our friend. But one thing I will just say is that I want to see how Trump will face the American people when it comes to that next debate that is a town hall format. That's going to be the trick. That's all. On this headline is we take a short break. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus Odiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron Akeriola to give us updates on African business, global business, and COVID-19. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. We're going over to our dependable Rotus Odiri here to give us Africa business update. Over to you, Rotus. How's it going, Rotus? Good morning.
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. We start with another victory for Nigeria in the UK court with respect to PNID, of course, Process and Industrial Development. You know the ongoing case that's been happening. UK court ordered the release of a $200 million guarantee, pretty much for the stay of execution granted to Nigeria, pending the appeal of the $9.6 billion arbitration award that was, initially awarded to PNID. So this is pretty good. Attorney General of the Federation and also the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, he hailed the decision. It's in our sister publication this day. Today's edition, you can read about it. Also, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele also hailed the decision, saying that this is going to, of course, go back into our reserves, $200 million. I mean, if you look at some of the sales to BDCs, they're as much as about 100 million, right? So if you look at what this means for the reserves, it's going to assist in, defending the Naira, also, plugging back in some liquidity into the market. So that was also what CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele said. I don't want to jinx this case, but if you look at what's been going on, September the 10th, the court ordered PNID to pay about £1.5 million in court fees in favor of Nigeria. So Nigeria has been racking up, gradually a series of victories here. So again, if you look at, the unscrupulous activities that happened in the past administration between them and these PNID executives, it looks like, again, I don't want to jinx it, but if you just look at the series of judgments that Nigeria has been getting, we might be able to turn this thing around and not have to pay that $9.6 billion. You just talked about the debates. I was looking forward to hearing foreign policy and hearing what President Trump and Vice President Biden were going to look at with regards to relationship with Africa, relationship with, the doctor is laughing, relationship with, okay, Rufai is laughing, relationship with the Middle East. They didn't even talk about China, they didn't talk about trade, the economic policies. If you are an investor in precious metals, Joe Biden's plan for renewable energy, as far as solar panels and subsidizing solar panels, might actually push up the cost of silver. So if or rather the price of silver on the markets. So people were hoping to hear more about that yesterday. Okay, should I get into gold? Should I get into silver? We didn't hear anything. It was just a barrage, and it was really, in all my years of watching these debates, it was the worst debates I've ever seen. But two quick polls. There were a top couple. Let's look at one poll that came from CBS here. Kyle Griffin works for MSNBC. Battleground Tracker poll, they said tonight's debate made you think better of Biden 38%, worse of him 32%. For Trump, better of him 24%, worse of him 42%. So a lot of people, as Doctor and you folks just talked about, saw Donald Trump as the aggressor here. I can't tell you what Donald Trump's next 4-year economic plan is for the United States or anything else. The second poll by CBS also showed that 48% thought Biden won, 41% thought Trump won, and 10% thought thought that it was a tie. Back to Nigeria, the NERC, Nigerian Regulatory Commission, Electricity Regulatory Commission, put out a tweet saying that they've, in case you've missed it, they have issued an order to the discos to suspend the recent review in tariffs for 14 days in line with the federal government's agreement with the labor union. During the suspension, all tariffs will be computed at the rates as of August the 31st. There's also a letter attached to this, a couple pages of the letter. I don't know what's going to happen over these 2 weeks. I really don't know what's going to be achieved. For people who are paying their bills in between this time and already received bills, don't know how the computations are going to work. But anyway, this is in line with everything else. Yesterday, remember, I said that the organized private sector, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, National Employment Consultative Association. I mean, take your pick. The organized private sector came together yesterday and said, look, do not reverse these service reflective tariffs. You will take the country backwards if you do that. So this 2-week stay of execution, I mean, we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. But what happens? Are they going to permanently keep them that way? Or is it going to revert back to what was on September the 1st? We'll see what happens. Thrive Agric, there's a tweet here I want you to take a look at. Just a random person who invested in them said, this Thrive Agric better not play with me because what is this mail I'm getting? To wait for 12 more months because they want to use returns from my investments to pay off old investments. There's a portion of a letter. Now, they are in the agro investments. They do agro investment schemes. Vice President Osibanjo keeps mentioning these folks anytime he wants to talk about investment in agriculture. That 60th anniversary commemorative discussion he had with the Africa Reports, we showed images of that and played excerpts of that. He was asked a question about how Nigerians in the diaspora can invest in Nigeria, and he mentioned the agri schemes and he mentioned Thrive Agri. Let's take a look at that letter again. This portion, it says here, as you can see what's circled, as operations pick up, so will payments. Payouts will be made in order of the maturity dates of the original farm subscriptions, but no more than 12 months in arrears. They further explained that for subscriptions that were due in April, they'll pay them first, May, June, July. They'll not be able to pay, right? So again, if you invest in these schemes, you supposedly are investing in wheat, rice, maize, whatever it is, and then you now get these returns. Remember, I had someone from the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, that has a draft bill right now that is looking to clamp down on these investment schemes because some of the returns are astronomical and they just really can't, how do you pay 30-40% returns where T-bill rates are at 1-2%? So anyway, their struggles continue with respect to Thrive Agric. And then South African Airways, finally, it's a crucial week for South African Airways. This week, the authorities are going to decide, that is the Business Rescue Practitioners, the BRPs, as to whether or not they'll be able to get that 10.5 billion rand that's supposed to rescue the airline. It's about $620 million. If they don't, they might have to liquidate South African Airways. So we'll see how this week pads up, but it's a very crucial week for them.
Just quickly on the electricity tariffs. You'll recall that in the early hours of Monday, that was when the meeting between organized labor and government negotiators took the decision that tariffs will be suspended for 2 weeks. And we had raised questions in this regard. Was the NERC, the regulatory body, part of that meeting? Now, it took the NERC close to 48 hours to issue a circular. I think questions can be raised in that regard. It also took the NERC to operationalize that decision that was taken after the discos themselves raised a protest within 24 hours that nobody had given them any direction. Meanwhile, September bills had been distributed based on the old MITO tariff of 2015, because the implication now is that the MITO tariff of 2015 will have to be suspended. So people have used electricity against the run of the decision that was taken in the early hours of Monday for close to 48 hours. Is there going to be a refund? What is the reprieve for electricity consumers who are already complaining, right? And who is going to pick up the cost? And people have asked the question of what value is a 2-week suspension of electricity tariffs, and what would happen hereafter in terms of negotiations? Is organized labor going to ask for a further extension of the suspension? So all are details that we need to be interested in. As for your concern about foreign policy not being a big issue in the debates, you mean seriously? You really expected that the debate would be about foreign policy? I mean, this is an election in which Americans will take a decision, and domestic policy as we say, drives foreign policy. Right. The American people are the ones who, at the end of the day, no matter how concerned we are as outsiders, who are going to take a decision. And that's why the things that are important to them are local issues about Obamacare, healthcare, race, President Trump dodging taxes and claiming that he has the right to do so. So I'm not surprised, even on the issue of climate change, which the moderator brought up at the end of the day, you could see there was really no big substance because both candidates are interested in getting the votes. Right. And there will be more focus on domestic policy. So I don't think we should expect that Africa should become a major subject, either for the moderator or the candidates in that debate, either yesterday or subsequently.
Rotus, I want to particularly talk on these agri schemes and how they are fast becoming the new Ponzi.
Right.
And it's quite very shocking. You brought a story a couple of weeks ago where a particular agri firm like this was advertising over close to 70% return on investment.
In only 6 months.
In 6 months. That company has not been tracked out. I'm not sure anything has been done. I'm not sure the signage agency has done something as regards that. And I was correct when I said APCON ought to verify the messaging going out. Now we are seeing this. This is something we should look at very critically because it takes a lot of investor confidence away from people that genuinely will invest their money and give them good returns. Right. So we should be careful about this. I want to see that bill. You say the SEC is pushing. Yeah. I want to see that bill pass quickly. Because people can't keep fleecing other people and going away with their money just like as though it used to be like the wonder banks of those days.
Right. An MMM.
An MMM. All right, thank you so much for that. We'll move on to Business Update with Michael Wilson, joining us from London this morning. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Shares mixed in Asia, as you'd expect, a digestion of that so-called debate that you've been talking about. China, though, let's just look at the facts, released another impressive set of data, non-manufacturing PMIs and also a commercial index of PMIs coming out very, very healthily indeed, highlighting the fact that most people have taken this, that China's recovery remains on track. But a very important statement yesterday from a councillor to China's top executive body, the State Council. He said in a briefing with reporters yesterday that China was trying to stimulate its domestic market. Now, this is really important because this is a way in which China has been trying to push itself, given an upcoming trade war with the United States and uncertain trade relations with the rest of the world. Yes, I know it's the second biggest economy in the world, probably one of the biggest export markets in the world, but it has always been looking to its consumers to try to take up some of the slack. They're calling it dual circulation, and it's part of a 5-year development plan that kicks off in 2021. That is a very, very important poster towards the future, never mind coronavirus and all the rest of it, presidential debates. That is the real key to things, and that will be a real rebalancing of global power. Mainland China, obviously on holiday from tomorrow, and it's joined by Hong Kong and Taiwan. South Korea on holiday today and on Friday. Thus, not a lot of action really as far as the Asian markets are concerned towards the end of the week as we go into it. Now, stock markets and both in Europe and the United States, relatively small losses, a bit of to and froing. I'll come on to the debate in a second between Democrats and Republicans. That all continues. Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, spoke to Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary. It looks like the Democrats are sort of rowing back a little from their demands for the stimulus package. They understood the Republicans are keen for a 1.3 trillion package. Democrats still on like a 2.2 trillion package, but at least they are talking to each other. Okay, that so-called debate last night, more heat than light. It's always a television event. US index futures down 300. It was fairly vicious. Like Rotus, I was searching for some kind of concrete proposals about policy, and there were very, very little. I got tired with it in the end, as I'm sure most people did, because you did get fed up with people interrupting each other. There was very little solid knowledge coming out of that. President Trump did not confirm that he will leave the White House peacefully, should the voting not go his way. And that really is the main problem about all this. And this is something which is troubling investors in London and in Europe as well. And I guess in the United States is in this. Remember that whoever wins does not go to the White House until January. And in that interregnum, as it's called, all sorts of things can happen. They have in the past, and they will probably happen again. But as a television spectacle, it was very noisy, very vicious, and pretty disappointing. Back to the data then, as far as the US is concerned, house price index up there, house price market, just like the UK, doing quite well, and consumer confidence as well, rising in the United States. One of those kind of factors that doesn't actually force feet to the fire as far as the stimulus package is concerned, as I've maintained all along, because there's some very bad news about that. Will we get that on Friday with the jobless figures? Who knows? Here, negative interest rates, that old chestnut's coming up again. The Bank of England boss, Andrew Bailey, has been talking about the fact that the evidence about the success of negative rates is mixed, which seems to say, to me at least, that he's giving himself some kind of option to go that at some stage. But the British banking system won't make money out of it, and it's also being squeezed because of bad debts as well. So I think that probably is a problem. As far as Brexit's concerned, those debates continue. Nothing new on that, still as far apart as ever as I can tell. And finally, commodities. Their brief rally in oil ended yesterday. Ample supplies on the international markets, and nothing really to boost it. Fairly good supplies. Gold climbs on a weaker US dollar. A slight push towards gold, given the risk of what we saw last night. But what did we see last night? I don't know. I'd be open to suggestions from you. I thought it was extremely disappointing. And when you see the debate on the world's largest economy not touching on anything like that, and as you've just said, this is something which is driven by a domestic agenda. So who are we to judge?
Okay, I want to amplify on a very important point you raised, because you said in the interregnum this happened before, and I'm sure you're referring to 2000 Bush and what's his name now, Al Gore, how that had to go to the courts. When Trump is saying, oh, if this happened, the election system is flawed already, he didn't just say it's not going to go out of the White House. He's discrediting the elections already. He's talking about ballot boxes ballot papers that are for Trump that are seen littered around that people have poured away. So he's discredited the elections that have started already. In a case where this goes to the Supreme Court, what will be the hope for investors and the American economy?
Okay, so the main indicator about that is what happened during the New Deal discussions when this interregnum actually took place. That's many years ago, and it really was very, very bad news for the stock market indeed. The problem is that investors at the moment, yes, I get you, they are looking at, as far as the US economy is concerned, they're looking at a Fed which has already said it will be accommodative, number one. Number two, interest rates at an all-time low. Number three, consumer confidence building up. Number four, yes, we are seeing job recovery bottoming out, but it is that the economy in the United States is still growing. Is it reining in on itself? Yes, it is. So that will encourage investors, I would say. And as I say, the equity markets always look a long time ahead. We're not, they're looking beyond January right now. But up until then, I think it'll be a very, very rocky ride. You remember the Floridian thing, I think you're talking about, the hanging chad. You remember all that in the early 80s when, there was actual physical evidence, one way or the other, that votes had been counted wrongly and recounts happened then. This is about the postal debate now, the postal returns rather, and it seems as though people, because they're not going to go out, because they're confined to their homes, may well be doing postal votes, and he will contest that. And I mean, if he's going to do that, then it will certainly rattle investors. It does not bode well. I think we're in for a pretty rough autumn.
All right, thank you so much for that, Michael Wilson. We'll go quickly to Aaron now for COVID-19 pandemic update.
Good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning.
And to you, and to right, oozing panache this morning. Good morning to you. And let's get started with...
You actually rehearsed these lines.
No, I didn't. No, funny enough, I did it just off the top of my head, literally.
He says, oozing panache, right? Yeah. Let me quote Joe Biden. I'm quoting Joe Biden. Shut up, man.
Rufai, unfortunately, we do not have that time.
Shut up, man.
Okay.
Shut up, man. I'm quoting Biden.
Okay.
I'm not telling you to shut up. I'm just shut up, man.
Okay, let's look at the outlook.
You left the field to him. You used to come with poetry every morning, Rufai. You stopped doing your poetry every morning. So
now
everyone has taken over.
Now it's private.
Right. Let's get straight into the figures today. Looking at the global outlook of COVID-19, as it stands right now, we have well over 33 million confirmed cases and still rising. Well over 1 million deaths at the moment, and that's still rising across 188 countries around the world. Now, getting deeper to this, trying to dimension this a little bit, if you can actually help us with the graph there, you can actually see that the figures are actually up from the 14-day change by 3%, while the deaths are, although slowing down, although we recorded over 6,000 yesterday globally, it's still down by 1%, which might be the fact that it's slowing down a little bit, but minus 1% is still very, very, very slim, I must say. But moving away from that to the UK, where Boris Johnson once again has been called out on his competence in the handling of this whole pandemic and how the government has actually gone about trying to put in place and enforce restrictions. Yesterday, he had a talk that ended up confusing the entire of the United Kingdom. He actually spoke about the rule of sex and how it should be applied, and he ended up modeling it up. Although his own minister earlier before then in a radio program could not even clarify the rule of sex and some of the new restrictions that are supposed to kick in the northeast. And yesterday, Boris Johnson could not even also help the matters in an address. He also just mixed up everything. In the bid to try to explain this thing, let's actually press it further. In the bid to try to explain this thing, the rule of 6 as it actually stands is that as for people right now, 6 from multiple households can only 6 people from multiple households can actually gather outside in an outdoor venue or in an enclosed space outside their own bubble from the 14th of September. It's as simple as that. And for those out there, some of the restrictions still includes in England, a meter plus gap must be given for social distancing, and for indoors, like we just said, 6 people from multiple households can only gather. All right, so you look at all that, that's stated also quite different, a little bit slight variations from Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and these things should not be that difficult, because right now the UK, as they are bracing up for the winter periods and bracing up for how things will be getting in the colder periods, they should be able to get these things right. Messaging from the government should be crystal clear. Unfortunately, that's not happening. Looking at the figures actually coming out from the United Kingdom, we can actually see that the cases are rising by 97% in the last 14 days. Looking at the 14 days figure, rising by 97%. Yesterday alone, over 7,000 were actually recorded. For deaths, over 217%, with 71 actually recorded yesterday. So the UK are actually bracing up for a second wave, which is only imminent. It's a matter of time, almost an inevitable as it stands right now. Moving on further, they spoke about the Northeast, where we'll be seeing several of these key places actually come up. Of course, the Tyneside area, and not forgetting Edinburgh, Glasgow, and some of these places. We're seeing the rises in the number of cases there, and at the moment, the messaging from the government should be crystal clear. They've always said that, I've always said it also, from what has been happening. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister in Scotland, has actually handled COVID-19 better than Boris Johnson. That seems to be the unanimous talk out there. In a bid to actually press it further away from that, let's actually get into India at the moment, where the Ministry of Health in India actually celebrated the fact that they are seeing a massive decline in cases. But a seroprevalence study was actually conducted in August, and they found out that in that seroprevalence, they found out that 1 in every 15 people that were tested actually had COVID-19 from ages 10 and above. And at the moment, when we look at the figures, as we actually move forward, when we look at the figures, we'll find out that at the moment, India actually has well over 6.1 million confirmed cases, which is down by 10% looking at the 14-day period. And also deaths are also down, which is a good thing, like we said earlier on, which is being celebrated by the government. But the fact that, as it stands right now, this is just a fraction from that zero prevalence survey that was conducted, that there are talks that as many as 60 million people have COVID-19 in India. Remember, as it stands right now, 1 in 3 cases globally from COVID-19 comes from India. As it stands right now, 1 in 5 deaths related to COVID-19 comes from India, which is a worrying sign. And this is why this seroprevalence surveys need to be done time and time again to be able to ascertain the antibodies present in human beings and as a means to determine the actual number, because we've spoken about underreporting and also poor reporting and poor testing. All these things put into context, people might be celebrating that COVID-19 might be waning, but that might just be a mirage or a facade at the moment. Quickly, here in Nigeria, the Presidential Task Force yesterday, once again, in their bi-weekly meeting, have actually spoken about a particular test which they say will be faster, cheaper, and also help in the ramp up testing capacity here in Nigeria. The isothermal molecular assay, as they are calling it, they claim is way cheaper and it will take less than 40 minutes to be able to produce the results. This was actually been disclosed by Senator Adeleke Mamora, talking about the Minister of State for Health. He spoke about this, but the thing he didn't touch on, which is a critical thing about these quick test kits that are actually going around globally, is the fact that although the Medical Research Institute must be commended for actually bringing out this particular thing, but the accuracy of the testing has always been called into question time and time again. And as it stands right now, that was not being mentioned, although it's been celebrated that at least we're trying to create or ramp up our testing capacity, but question marks about the efficacy and also the accuracy of those tests are not being mentioned at the moment.
Aaron, well, quick comment.
Yes.
On India, yes, it's true. You say the seroprevalence rate is about 6.1 million after the last serological survey.
Over 60 million, actually.
Well, okay. But if you look at it as a proportion of the population of 1.3 billion,
yes.
You may say that the situation in India, in absolute terms, and with the rate of testing, is not probably as scary as what you have in a country like, say, Mexico or Argentina.
True.
Now, one other challenge that India faces is a poor health infrastructure system that they have, which I hope that the authorities will learn as a lesson from this COVID-19 challenge and try to address going forward. But as we pointed out yesterday, the brighter side of it is that the recovery rate in India is high. It's about 82%.
Yes.
So if you look at all of this, there may well even be lessons that other countries like ours and other low and middle-income countries can learn from what is going on in India. Mm-hmm. Now, you cited the case of the United Kingdom. Yes, it's good to see, you know, the people of the UK holding their leadership accountable. Some of the stories about Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the last 24 hours, you know, those messages have been ridiculing him. Either he has his shoelaces undone, or he's shown scratching his head, or he's been accused of being confused, you know. And indeed, COVID-19, managing COVID-19 can create, you know, confusion, even in the heads of leaders.
Yes.
And we have seen that example even in the UK, where now rebels within the Tory party are even saying that going forward, any new measures that will be introduced will have to be subjected to closer and more rigorous parliamentary scrutiny. Yeah. Because if the Prime Minister himself does not know the rules being applied in Northern England and in, potentially also in London, then it means that the country is facing very serious problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that what the parliamentarians are doing in the UK, we would like to see our own lawmakers doing that, you know, in Africa, asking questions rather than pretending to be a rubber stamp applause gathering. In Nigeria, yes, Chikwege Kwazu is correct. I mean, do we even have the capacity to produce a vaccine? But the good news is that we are on that COVAX Alliance list, being done by Gavi Alliance and the WHO. And I think we have also positioned ourselves very well with Pfizer. And so once the vaccine comes, Dr. Yekwazu says, well, we may not have the capacity for technological invention or for scientific procedures, but we are very good at distribution. So I hope when the vaccine eventually gets
how
there.
good are we at distribution is the big question.
I'm quoting Dr.
But this was his point, Aaron. This was his point. We're good at distribution because we've had polio campaigns over the years. Yeah. We've had other, immunization campaigns, and we do these things serially. So we're good at distribution as regards that. But I just really want to make a point about Boris Johnson. Dr. Abati, how will Boris Johnson put in proper laws in place when the person advising him, Dominic Cummings, is part of those breaking COVID laws?
Oh, you still won't forgive him for that. He already broke the lockdown.
In any case, with 7,000 cases per day in the last, say, 48 hours in the UK, the UK is now already on red alert. And, it should be understandable that everybody is concerned. You talked about a likely second wave. So I think people are anxious, people are panicking, because if you have a second wave, as you have seen in Denmark, as we're likely to see in Germany, as you have seen in Israel, then
even
of course,
in Spain.
in Spain, yes, then of course, the implications.